Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's Big Chris, and today we're talking about this. Pilates. What is Pilates? Okay, so Pilates takes its name from a man known as Joseph Pilates. He was a German who first moved to Britain and then later moved to the United States before coming back to Europe. He devised the Pilates method as a new approach to exercise and body conditioning, and this happened in the early decades of last century. Now, his methods included the use of equipment which he referred to as apparatus. Now, perhaps the best known piece of equipment in Pilates is Pilates Reformer, which kind of looks like this. So Joseph Pilates was born near Dusseldorf in 1880, and he was a sickly child, but he was determined to make himself healthy and strong. And he took up bodybuilding to a point that when he got to his teens, he actually started to get jobs as a model for the anatomical drawings, a little bit like me probably. Okay, so Pilates was perhaps the first influential figure to combine the Western and Eastern ideas about health and physical fitness. He researched the practices for all different kinds of exercises, and he just tried to be like a sponge and learn everything. Now, this ranged everything from classical Roman to classical Greek exercise regimes to bodybuilding and gymnastics. He set this alongside practices from the Eastern disciplines such as yoga, you've got Tai Chi, martial arts, Zen meditation. Okay, so additionally, he studied autonomy and animal movements as well. So dedicated to this task, he sampled every kind of exercise that he could, carefully recording all of their results. So in 1912, at the age of 32, he left Germany and he went to the UK, where he became a professional boxer. He was also a really good skier and a diver. And it was whilst he was in England that he taught self-defense to Scotland Yard detectives and found work, interestingly, as a circus acrobat. Oh, so on the outbreak of World War I, the British, they interred him as a German enemy alien. He used his time as an internee to start developing a new approach to exercise and body conditioning. So this is the start of what we know today as Pilates. So during his internment, he also got the chance to work as a nurse, and this in turn gave him a great opportunity to experiment by attaching springs to hospital beds so that the patients could start their toning of their muscles whilst they were still bedbound. So such were the origins of the first Pilates machines, now known as Pilates Reformer. So in the early carnations of Pilates Reformers, they were shaped as basically a sliding bed with a spring that became the resistance. So he then returns to Germany after World War I, and Pilates works with the pioneers of movement technology such as Rudolf Laban. And it was Laban who created the basic system of dance notions that are still used today. So where was the very first Pilates studio? Where was that? So here we go. In 1923, Pilates moves to the wonderful United States. He opens up his first studio in New York City alongside Clara, his wife and assistant, who he had met whilst on the Atlantic crossing. Now, his new method was an instant hit over in America, particularly along with the dancers and people that performed on stage, such as Martha Graham. There were also other dancers that became quite devoted to the idea of Pilates. They found that Pilates as a method was the best way to try and preserve their bodies from injury and prevention in the future. So gradually, a wider audience started to hear about Pilates. So Pilates called his new technique Controlology, and it was only later that it became known as Pilates. He conceived it as a mental as well as physical conditioning in which individuals could work their bodies to their fullest potential. In explaining Controlology and guidance principles, he liked the quote, "It is the mind itself that builds the body." Pilates returns to Britain. So Pilates method didn't return back to the British shores until 1970, and it was brought back by a man known as Alan Herdman. So Herdman had been asked by the London School of Contemporary Dance to go over to America, visit New York, and investigate the methods of Joseph Pilates. So Herdman established Britain's very first Pilates studio at The Place in London of that same year. So there we go, everybody. Thank you very much for watching this video on the history of Pilates. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching.